Hello, welcome to another video for anatomy and physiology. This video we're going to be highlighting the digestive system, in particular the accessory organs, or the organs in which aid in digesting and processing food. So let's go ahead and get started with the oral cavity. So in response to food, your body first begins the digestive process by chewing the food, of course. That's the mechanical. And then the chemical digestive process begins with your salivary glands. Okay, you have three types of salivary glands that we're going to discuss. Your first ones are on the external side of your mandible, called your parotid salivary glands. Okay, your salivary glands, while you're chewing your food, they release mucus, which helps lubricate the food, electrolytes, lysosomes, antibacterial properties. So any dangerous bacteria that your body doesn't need, those lysosomes kill it. Salivary amylase and lingual lipase. And these enzymes begin the process of digesting starches and fats. Okay, so your parotid, excuse me, your parotid salivary glands. And then if you take a look underneath your mandible, right? So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to remove the lips, okay, the gingiva, and your teeth, so we can get a better look at these salivary glands. So you'll notice that I removed the upper and lower teeth and the gingiva, okay, and also part of your maxilla right here, the right maxilla. So we can take a look, and you can see the tongue, okay. So I'm going to, in the next shot, I'm going to remove the tongue so we can see underneath the tongue. In fact, you can kind of see these glands right here. These are your sublingual glands, salivary glands. Okay, so let me remove the tongue so you can get a better view. So I removed the tongue and I removed the cartilage from the nose. Okay, and you can see right there your sublingual salivary glands. Okay, so let's rotate and take a look from the base of the skull there. You can see your sublingual glands once again. Okay, so here's my sublingual glands. If I move more posterior and lateral, here I have my other salivary glands. Those are my submandibular glands. Okay, so just below the mandible. So these are the salivary glands that secrete the saliva in your mouth as you're chewing food to make it more easily swallowable. So the food at this point is called the bolus, and as you've seen in the other videos, this is where the bolus now begins to make its way down the esophagus into the stomach. Okay, so we made our way down to the stomach. In the stomach, we're going to discuss three main gastric juices that are produced in the stomach. There are a few others, but I just want to focus on these three just to keep the video at a respectable length. The first one that I want to discuss, actually before I get into those gastric juices, take a notice here of the stomach. So you have obviously that, the pouch, if you will, where the food and the gastric juices will mix. But remember also that in the stomach you also have a mechanical breakdown of food, and you can see that the stomach is multi-layered. So if you look at these different layers of muscle, okay, you can see the different striations, and based off of the striations you can determine what type of muscle it is. So for example, this first one right here, okay, that first one at the very right there, that one, that's called your longitudinal muscle layer. So just look at the striations. They're more of a, they're more elongated up and down. And then you have your circular muscle layer. Okay, so it's circular. It's going around the stomach. And then you have the stomach layer just inferior to that. It's more oblique. Okay, that's your oblique muscle layer. And then of course you have the mucosa layer, which is the innermost layer of the stomach. And just above that mucosa layer, you actually have another layer of mucus that protects the stomach from the incredibly acidic environment that's created by our first gastric juice, hydrochloric acid. Thanks to hydrochloric acid, the pH in the stomach can go as low as 0.8 pH, which is in the realm of battery acid. So if the stomach juice gets out of the stomach, it can create substantial damage to the surrounding tissues. You could hemorrhage to death. Actually, you could literally burn a hole in your stomach. And so you have another juice, gastric juice called pepsin, which its main function is to digest protein. Sometimes the stomach can hypersecrete this particular this gastric juice. Sometimes because of maybe you're taking too much aspirin or NSAIDs, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs. These particular drugs keep the cells in the stomach from producing more mucus or bicarbonate, which protect that lining. But mainly, ulcers mainly occur from overgrowth of a particular bacteria called Helicobacter bacteria. So, Pepto-Bismol or antibacterial medicines are ways to deal with those peptic ulcers. So its main function is to digest protein. And the third and final gastric juice we're going to talk about is intrinsic factor. Okay, intrinsic factor helps absorb vitamin B12, which is essential in the production of hemoglobin, your blood. Okay, so that does it for the three main juices for our stomach. Okay, take that final look in the stomach before we move on to our next two accessory organs. Okay, just zooming out just a tad bit and adding a few organs. We see here we have the liver. The liver is the largest gland in the human body. It has several hundred functions, and in terms of the digestive system, it only has one particular job, and that's to produce bile. Bile is used to break down fats that we consume. So when the hepatic sites, the cells in the liver produce bile, it stores it in this bladder right here that you see that's just at the base of the liver, and that's called your gallbladder. Okay, so your gallbladder works in conjunction with your pancreas. Let me zoom out just a bit, which sits just here posterior to the stomach. We'll get to that in just a second. Now, in terms of accessory organs, your gallbladder is not an essential organ. It's not like the liver that actually produces the bile. Okay, your pancreas produces pancreatic juice. Now, to better understand the pancreatic juice, and I want to show you where it's secreted. So I had my stomach here, and I removed my stomach, and I have here my duodenum. Okay, remember your duodenum is the most proximal aspect of the small intestine. Okay, so it's right after the stomach. So the stomach produces very acidic gastric juices, and that incredibly acidic gastric juice goes now into your small intestine. Okay, now your small intestine is it's small because, well, we'll talk about the small one just after the pancreas. But these juices are incredibly acidic, and so the pancreas produces something called pancreatic juice, which is very alkaline, very base, and that helps to buffer the incredibly acidic juice that's coming out of the stomach. Now, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to fade the pancreas, and you can see the pancreatic ducts, right? So you can see this huge duct system. So as the pancreas produces these pancreatic juices, now also the pancreas also helps in processing sugars. It produces insulin and glucagon and maintaining sugar levels in the bloodstream. So take notice here. Here, let me hide this particular aspect of the pancreas. You'll notice that the pancreatic duct and the bile duct, so your bile duct and your liver produce bile. Did I say bile duct? I meant gallbladder. Your gallbladder and your liver produce bile, and they come, and your bile duct and your pancreatic duct meet. They come together, and they both excrete their juices at the very proximal portion of the duodenum. Okay, and that's because they want to, again, as soon as that acidic juice comes out of the that acidic chyme comes out of the stomach, okay, they want to buffer that so that it can continue its digestive process down the long small intestine. And this duct is called your common bile duct. Okay, so you can see here that it enters your duodenum right here. Let me see if we can zero in on that. Okay, can you see that little opening right here? And while we're here, let's go ahead and start talking about our small intestine. Okay, so let me highlight this and show it. Okay, so here's our small intestine. Okay, nearly all the chemical digestion that occurs, okay, occurs here in the small intestine. It's 20 feet, about 20 feet long. Okay, it's called small because that's referring to its diameter, not its length. Okay, duodenum. Something interesting about the name duodenum, which is the right after your stomach. Duodenum. I know it sounds like a funny name, but it's basically referring to the number 12, and number 12 referring to that the length of the duodenum is about 12 finger widths in length. Okay, so just after the duodenum, you have the jejunum. Okay. Again, one of those funny names, jejunum meaning empty, because when anatomists were first dissecting the human body and they would look at this portion of the small intestine, they normally found it empty. So jejunum, empty. Okay. And then, of course, the most distal part of your small intestine, your ileum. So keep in mind, again, your food is making its way down this really long tube, and as it's making its way down, it's being all the nutrients and sugars and such are being extracted from the chyme, from the food, and they're being pumped into your blood system, so that your body can then use those essential elements for your daily activities. So I have here highlighted my the most distal aspect of my small intestine, the ileum. Okay, so my ileum, where it ends, this is where now my large intestine begins. Okay, and here in the large intestines, you'll find mostly indigestible waste. Okay, and here at the very beginning of it, the cecum, you also have that small tube called your appendix. In your appendix, it has it's mainly densely populated immune cells. Okay, for the immune system. Okay, so again, this is mostly indigestible food. Your cecum, as you remember, your ascending, transverse, and descending colon. I know we've discussed this in the previous video, the sigmoid colon. Now, the large intestine is very important. Just like the small intestine, its name is referring to its diameter, not necessarily its length. And it's important because it's the last step in the process for the digestive system. Now, for the most part, the food that's in the large colon is indigestible, but they house some very important hosts there, or not hosts, but cells that you wouldn't think. Okay, they house bacteria. Okay, they have about 800 species of bacteria in the large intestines. Okay, we call this bacterial flora. Okay, so they're teeming with bacteria, and they play a very essential role in digestion. In fact, you get a lot more nutrients because of them than you would if they weren't there. They help synthesize, produce vitamin K, vitamin B, and they also produce something that you may not necessarily appreciate, but as a process, indigestible uh, parts of your food, they also produce gas, intestinal gas, okay, flatulence. um, One of the important issues about this bacterial flora in the large intestine, sometimes it can get thrown out of whack. Either poor eating habits or some kind of bacterial infection that you get, and you get one of the common causes for this is or diseases or sicknesses is diarrhea. When your large colon does not absorb enough water, which is one of the main aspects of the large colon is to absorb the remaining water. Okay, so it's absorbing water, but if the bacterial flora gets thrown out of whack, you get diarrhea. And one of the interesting treatments for this, which will be you might be grossed out, but it's called fecal implants. Okay, so you take the feces of a healthy person who has all the healthy, balanced bacteria in their colon. You take that feces and you implant that into a sick person, and that will help them regain the balance of flora that they've lost through whatever sickness that they had, and that will usually stop the bacteria or the diarrhea that they've had. So something to keep in mind as well with this bacteria. This isn't this is actually quite important. When we think about the human body has about a trillion human cells. Okay, think about that for a second. So all the cells in your body, your skin, your lungs, all the tissues, everything, you have about a trillion. Well, inside and outside of the body, you also have about 10 trillion bacterial cells right now. These cells are surrounding your body on the outside. They create a nice invisible barrier. They protect you from other contaminants. And then you have bacteria that line your intestinal system, which aid, as we mentioned before, they aid in the digestive process. So you have 10 times more bacterial cells than you do your own human cells. So you might actually say, technically, you're actually more bacteria than you are human. You might even say that instead of us carrying around bacteria, they're actually carrying us around. They're keeping us alive, really. So, you know, when you look at a person, at another person, they're technically 90% bacteria. They're more bacteria than they are human. So that does it for the digestive system. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and good luck in your studying.